You're at the DMV. You're filling out a form for your driver's license. There are about 30 fields. You're filling them out half asleep because it's 9 a.m. and you've been here since 7:30. Near the bottom, there's a single checkbox. It says, I would like to be an organ donor. You either check it or you don't. It takes you about a quarter of a second. You move on. That single quarter-second decision, yours and 250 million other Americans, is statistically the most important medical decision you will ever make. More important than which doctor you see. More important than your insurance plan. More important than every annual checkup combined. And in two countries on the same continent, it isn't really a decision at all. Austria has the same form. Germany has the same form. Same continent. Same language family. Same income level. Mostly the same religion. The difference between them on this single question is statistically wider than the difference between most planets in our solar system. Austria's organ donor consent rate is 99.98%. Germany's is 12%. These numbers are not approximations. They are not rounded for dramatic effect. Austria has essentially solved organ donation. Germany has not. And the two countries do not differ on culture, religion, healthcare quality, civic engagement, or any of the other things you might assume. They differ on one word printed on the form. Austria's box is opt-out. Germany's is opt-in. Same question, opposite default, 8 times the lives saved. Once you understand why that's true, you start seeing the same trick everywhere, not just on driver's license forms, on every page you click OK on, every subscription you forget to cancel, every retirement plan you didn't enroll in. The default option is not a small thing. The default option is often the whole thing. In 2003, 2 researchers, Eric Johnson at Columbia and Daniel Goldstein, then at Columbia, now at Microsoft Research, published a paper in Science magazine called Do Defaults Save Lives? It does exactly what the title says. They mapped organ donor consent rates across European countries. The numbers told a story so clean it almost didn't look like real data. In countries where citizens had to opt in, meaning the default was no, I'm not a donor, consent rates clustered between 4 and 27%. Denmark, 4%. The Netherlands, 28%. The UK at the time, 17%. Germany, 12%. In countries where citizens had to opt out, meaning the default was yes, I'm a donor unless I say otherwise, consent rates clustered between 86 and 99.98%. Sweden, 86%. Belgium, 98%. France, 99.91%. Austria, 99.98%. There were no countries in the middle. There was no overlap. The distribution wasn't a curve. It was 2 completely separate clouds. And the line between them wasn't culture or religion or income or trust in doctors. The line was the wording on a form. The cleanest comparison is the one that should be impossible. Sweden and Denmark. Same Scandinavian culture. Same secular Lutheran heritage. Same standard of living. Same socialized medicine. Their consent rates, 86% and 4%. A 21 times difference. The only thing that's different is which checkbox is pre-filled. If you had shown a doctor, or a politician, or a public health expert these numbers in 2002, almost none of them would have predicted the answer was the form. They would have guessed religion, culture, civic education, trust in the medical system. They would have been wrong. The form was almost the only thing that mattered. Now here's the part where you might be expecting the explanation to be complicated. It isn't. Richard Thaler, who later won a Nobel Prize for partly this work, broke it down to 3 things in his book, Nudge. First, changing a default takes cognitive effort, even a small amount, even just 30 seconds. And human beings are, on average, the most effort-minimizing animals on Earth. Given the choice between making a decision and not making a decision, we will overwhelmingly pick the second one, even when the stakes are life and death. Second, defaults carry the social weight of an implied consensus. Your brain treats the default as this is what most people do, even when the default was set by a bureaucrat in 1974 who didn't think about it. Third, inertia is free. Choosing has a small but real cost. You have to weigh, decide, and commit. doing nothing has no cost. So when you're tired, when you're rushed, when there are 29 other fields on the form, the rational thing to do is exactly nothing. The default wins, because the default is what happens when you save your effort for something else. The terrifying part is that this is true even when the stakes are enormous. The Johnson and Goldstein paper isn't about people too lazy to think about consent. It's about every person in every country being equally rational. The Austrians aren't more generous than the Germans. They're functionally identical. They just live under a different default, and that default is producing 8 times more donors. If a difference this large can come from a single checkbox on a form people barely read, what other defaults are running your life right now? Here's a story almost no American knows. In 2006, Congress passed something called the Pension Protection Act. It was boring legislation. It was on no front page. It contained dozens of provisions about pension plans and retirement accounts. Buried inside it was one short paragraph that allowed companies to switch their 401k plans from opt-in to opt-out, meaning instead of new employees having to fill out paperwork to start contributing to retirement, they would automatically be enrolled and have to fill out paperwork to stop. That paragraph was almost certainly the largest poverty reduction tool in 21st century American policy. Within 10 years of companies adopting auto-enrollment, retirement savings rates among low-income workers nearly doubled. Same workers, same income, same investment options. We're talking about real money, billions of dollars in real retirement accounts that simply would not exist if the default had stayed opt-in. So now look at your day. Open your email. Half the senders are companies you signed up for because their Send Me Marketing Emails checkbox was pre-checked when you bought something 3 years ago. You didn't decide to receive them. You decided to buy a thing. The emails came along by default. Look at your phone. Open Settings, then Privacy. Half the apps have permissions you didn't grant. They were pre-granted at install. You did not decide to share your location with the Calculator app. The Calculator app was given your location by default. Look at your bank. The savings account with 0.01% interest is the default. The high-yield account at the same bank is one click away. You have to opt in. Almost no one does. There are millions of dollars sitting in 0.01% accounts whose owners would have moved them if they'd had to actively choose the bad rate. Look at your subscriptions. Almost every one of them has auto-renew turned on by default. Almost every one of them is harder to turn auto-renew off than it was to turn it on. The customer who hasn't used the service for 6 months is still paying because the default is keep paying. You are surrounded by defaults. Almost every one of them was set by someone whose financial interest is the opposite of yours. And almost none of them were set by you. The Austrian and German governments didn't set those defaults by accident. Someone decided which box would be pre-filled, and that person understood something most of us never consciously register. The default isn't a neutral starting point. It's a decision made on your behalf by someone else before you ever showed up. Austria has 99.98% organ donors because someone chose that default. Germany has 12% because someone chose a different one. Neither country asked its citizens which they'd prefer. They just set the form, and the form decided. Every default around you was set by someone. The question isn't why Austria's number is so high, it's who's been setting yours.